Welcome back to our system design course. Today, we are tackling a concept that is, no joke, the absolute bedrock of any reliable system you will ever build: availability. So let's just dive right in.
You know the feeling, right? We've all been there. You go to watch a video and nothing. It's just down. A while back, YouTube had this massive global outage. Took them offline for about an hour. And look, these things aren't just random glitches. They are failures in availability. Understanding why they happen is the first step to making sure they don't happen in the systems that you build.
So here's our game plan. First, we're going to define what availability actually is. Then, we'll get into the industry lingo, the nines. From there, we'll look at the real-world strategies for building for high availability, check out some super important math every architect needs to know, and finally, we'll clear up the difference between availability and fault tolerance. Sound good? Let's go.
Okay, first things first. When we say a system is available, what are we really talking about?
So, at its simplest, it's just a percentage. How much of the time is your system actually up and working? But you gotta pay attention to that last part of the definition. Despite failures within its components. That is everything. See, this isn't about hoping things don't break. It's about designing a system that expects things to break and just keeps on chugging along anyway.
But here's a reality check, right? Pushing for more and more availability isn't free. It costs you in time, in complexity, and definitely in money. I mean, think about it. The availability needs of an air traffic control system are going to be just a little different from, say, your personal blog. The key takeaway is you have to optimize for your actual needs, not just chase the highest number you can.
All right, let's get into how we talk about this stuff in the real world. Because we don't just throw percentages around. We have a shorthand that makes these abstract numbers feel a lot more, well, real.
Yeah, we talk about the nines. So 99.9% availability is called 3 nines. 99.99% is 4 nines. And what's often called the gold standard, 99.999%, that's 5 nines. Now, I know what you're thinking. That doesn't sound like a huge difference, right? Well, let's see what it actually means. Okay, now this is where it gets crazy. Look at the difference just one more 9 makes. At 3 nines, you're allowed about 43 minutes of downtime a month. But jump to 4 nines, that plummets to just over 4 minutes. Per day, you go from 1.5 minutes of acceptable downtime to less than 9 seconds. That one extra 9 completely changes the game.
So, the million-dollar question is, how on earth do we build systems that can actually hit those kinds of numbers? Well, it's not magic, it's just smart architectural choices.
The number one most important principle, bar none, is redundancy. The whole idea is simple. You never, ever want to have a single point of failure. If a part of your system is critical, you need a backup. It's that simple. If you have one web server and it dies, your site is gone. If you have 2 and one dies, hey, the other one can pick up the load, and your users might never even know anything went wrong. And redundancy comes in 2 main flavors. You've got passive, which is like having a backup generator. It's just sitting there, on standby, waiting for the main power to go out. Then you have active redundancy, where all your components are working at the same time, probably sharing the load. If one of them fails, the others just absorb its work without skipping a beat. But, redundancy by itself isn't enough. You also need a load balancer to spread the traffic out. You need automatic failover so you don't have to wake up at 3 a.m. to manually switch to the backup. You've got to have data replication to make sure that backup server actually has up-to-date information. And, of course, you need really good monitoring and alerting so you know something's wrong before it becomes a catastrophe. Okay, I need you to lean in for this next part because this is probably the most powerful and practical thing we're going to talk about today. This is where a single design decision can make a monumental difference. It's all about the math. So imagine you've got 2 services, Service A and Service B. Each one has a 3 nines availability. Now, if a request has to go through A and then through B to work, they're in sequence. To get the total availability, you multiply them. So what do you think you get? Your total availability actually goes down. It drops to 99.8%, which is basically 2 nines. This is a huge deal. Just by chaining your services together, you've made your entire system less reliable than any of its individual parts. Okay, but now watch this. What if we take those exact same components and we arrange them in parallel, so a request can be handled by either A or B? The math here is we figure out the chance that they both fail at the same time, and then we subtract that from 100%.
The result, the availability goes through the roof. It's 99.999999%. That is 6 nines. This is just incredible, right? We've built an almost perfectly reliable system using 2 imperfect components, all by just changing how they're arranged. That is the power of parallel architecture.
All right, last piece of the puzzle. We need to get really clear on 2 terms that people mix up all the time, but they mean very different things. High availability versus fault tolerance. So high availability, what we've been talking about, is all about minimizing downtime. Something breaks, there might be a tiny interruption while the backup kicks in. Fault tolerance, though, is the next level. It's about having 0 downtime. A component fails, and the system just keeps operating perfectly, with no interruption at all. It often requires some pretty specialized hardware to pull off. And we always have to remember, there is no free lunch in system design. All these strategies for high availability, like replicating data everywhere, they can come with a performance cost. I mean, writing data to 3 different machines is just going to be slower than writing it to 1. It's always this balancing act between reliability, consistency, and speed. Look, if you walk away with just one thing today, please let it be this. Your diagrams on a whiteboard, your architectural choices, they aren't just abstract ideas. As we just saw with the math, they have a direct, massive, and very real impact on how reliable your system is going to be. And there you have it, our deep dive into availability. We've hit the what, the why, and the how. So the real question now is for you and your next project. Thanks for joining me for this part of our course. I really hope this helps you build some incredibly robust and reliable applications out there.